this idea of like it's either art or ads. There's basically the two things that are happening in a internet economy. You have like people creating stuff and then people trying to sell stuff based on the attention that's on the stuff that somebody else has created.
Crazy.
It's very simple, right?
When you think about it, look at the top companies in the world, top 10. Obviously, Facebook, Meta, and Google, they're ads based. Amazon has a $30 billion ad business. Microsoft has a 10. Everything comes back to ads on the internet. It's just like.
Wow, welcome to another episode of Not Investment Advice. We got the NI boys here today. Trung Phan, Jack Butcher, Bilal Zaidi. What's going on, boys? Hell of a week ahead. What's going on?
Well, what's the hell of a week ahead? What?
I mean, it's the hell of a week if you make it that, Trung. You know, let's just get it started off positive.
It's only Tuesday.
Yeah. You already got to that dad level this week? Is that what it is?
No, it's danger zone now, man. It's always sunny, and when it's sunny, all I want to do is drink, which is really bad for sleep. So,
yeah, you're feeling it from the weekend still, yeah?
I had for some reason drank on Sunday. Like,
you're still feeling it today.
Way to start the week is just not a good way to start the week. How about you guys? What's popping?
What's going on, Jack? Jack, anything going on your side, mate?
No, just back from some traveling. Got some family time in. Had a good few days back at home.
All right,
where
beautiful.
Were you traveling?
That's it. I was in New York last week, I think. Yeah.
Was that only last week, or like?
That was
I
last
can't remember.
week.
Yeah,
I think.
a week and a
this
half
is
or
all
something.
related. Oh, okay, yeah. The NFT. Everything's related to checks when you travel, right? Yeah.
For the most part, yeah.
Okay,
yeah,
fair enough.
Cool. All right, well, we got a lot to talk about. Let's get on with it, boys. It was SpaceX Starship. We're going to be talking about that today. We also got a follow-up to last week's AI music discussion, an artist called Grimes. We're going to just explain what she posted and how that's relevant to what we spoke about last week. And then the end of Buzzfeed news and kind of like legacy media stuff going on with Tucker and Don Lemon out.
I don't watch either of those networks. I'm going to get into it now, but I'm like, damn, this is like a pretty crazy day.
Double what? Two of them just, it feels like
the
TV show.
Stars and cable TV, right?
Did you guys watch that morning show on Apple with Jennifer Aniston?
Yeah.
It kind of reminds me a little bit like that, just like the drama of it all. Yeah, no, honestly, I haven't even followed that stuff. So yeah, I want to hear your take on that. But yeah, let's start off with the SpaceX stuff. Trung, what happened in the last week, mate? Because I know you were following this pretty closely.
What have you guys followed? What is the context here that we know?
Jack, did you see much about this? I just saw that there was the Starship launch, and that's about it.
Did you know
disassembled, rapid unscheduled disassembly? Yeah.
I
have not been in it as much as I should be. Actually, we were just having this conversation yesterday. Like, whenever I get sent the recaps of these things, I watch them. I'm like, why am I like getting out of bed, scheduling time in the day to watch this? Because it is like profound, incredible. We're just like, for whatever reason, man, like we don't have that collective appreciation for the magnificent.
We're too distracted watching Indian Matchmaker on Netflix, mate. Or
right. Tucker Carlson's. Oh my God, fucking this guy's been sacked from the news. You know, it's crazy.
Yeah. But I mean, actually, that was something what we wanted to talk about as well. Maybe we can explain what happened, but also just kind of like why people don't really care about space.
50,000 foot level, right? It's like something. So like, here's the top line. This is like, it's the heaviest and most powerful rocket ever created, right? So there was a time many decades ago when this used to obviously be a huge deal. It's a lot of topics that we've covered on this show about like appointment viewing. And I mean, you guys are you nailed it, right? There's all these different verticals of distraction, and somehow it all flattens out, right? Because we're all consuming it on Twitter, or we're all consuming it on YouTube. So everything kind of feels and looks the same. Like the sporting event, like before the show, Bilal was talking about the Premier League. And then we're talking about Tucker Carlson from Fox and Don Lemon from CNN. Both either resigned or were fired or whatever happened yesterday. We'll go through that. But it all kind of flattens everything. And to Jack's point, we kind of lose sight of when something actually ridiculous happens. And so I have to reiterate, like Starship is the largest rocket that humanity's ever tried to send, like, and launch. This actually test wasn't meant to send it into orbit. So this was an integrated test flight. And there were some problems with it. And SpaceX will learn, and improve future launches. But for anybody that saw the headlines, you probably saw, I mean, did you guys see, hey, Jack alluded to it before the well, actually, he alluded to it right now. SpaceX tweeted out rapid wait, what was it?
Rapid unscheduled disassembly, I'm pretty sure.
Okay. So basically, within 4 minutes of launching this rocket, there was a rapid unscheduled disassembly, which people made fun of to say, like, this is the greatest euphemism ever for it blew up in midair, which it did. The plan was for, again, the largest and most powerful rocket ever to be sent as do a partial turn around the globe, and then it was going to disassemble and land somewhere in the Pacific near Hawaii. So what ended up happening is that Starship it's two parts. So somewhat confusingly, the top part, which is the vehicle that will eventually ferry people to Mars and the Moon, that is also called Starship, and the bottom part is called the Heavy Booster, and that is where you put the 36 Raptor engines that fires it into the air. So it never actually got the separation between the first part and the second part. And what the second part was sent, what they ended up doing was they realized it wasn't separating. So they actually did a controlled explosion to blow it up above past the Gulf of Mexico. So the two things I will say is this, and then I'm happy to ask you guys questions. We can do the more macro stuff. But why the launch wasn't necessarily a failure, because if you actually look at a lot of mainstream media coverage, a lot of it is they just hate Elon. That's just the truth. Or he's definitely a media political type of enemy. A lot of coverage is like, oh, blew up midair, right? This is a total failure. I think on the positive sides, and I think anybody that, you'll never see such a dichotomy on Twitter, which again, it's not the real world, but if you look at people to understand and talk about space, and then you look at like the cheap sheets of the media folk, total split, right? Everybody in like even the NASA administrators like great success, right? And then just look at it. Basically, what happened is you have to think about what happened if they didn't get this rocket off the launch pad, or if there was such a terribly bad accident that, God forbid, somebody got injured. Which there are questions now around some of the pollutions that happened and the dust and the sound stuff, but nobody actually directly, to my knowledge, has got injured within the first from that launch. But imagine if something really bad had happened. You could ground this thing potentially forever, right? Like between regulators and the public, it's like, this is too dangerous. Because this is the equivalent of setting off a bomb, essentially, to lift the rocket into the air. Because we're talking about something that's like, I think what the number was is something ridiculous. I think 5,000 tons? I mean, this thing can carry 250,000 tons of payload. Or no, kilograms of payload. But it's 400 feet high. I don't want to get too much into the weeds, but clearing the launch pad is very important. The FAA actually has put a pause on future Starship missions as they investigate the explosion, which looks like is much bigger than they expected. But the second part is there's something during the flight of a rocket called Max Q, and that's basically the maximum pressure at any point that ship will face. And if it can survive that, you basically prove that, you know what, it's actually possible to get the most powerful and the largest rocket into the air, 40 kilometers. It was supposed to go 140 kilometers, but iterations away from getting to orbit and beyond. The TLDR for me was just, we talked about it, is they're already landing rockets in a much smaller vehicle called the Falcon 9 and the Falcon Heavy, and they're re-landing rockets that can be reused. So my point, and Jack brought it up, is it's freaking amazing what's already been done. And if you had said 10 years ago you were landing rockets in a barge in the middle of the ocean, I kind of just want to ask you guys, like, it's just gotten so normalized, right? Is this kind of the feeling here of the space travel stuff?
Yeah, I think it's normalized, but it's also people have shit imaginations, right? They don't really, you can't really extrapolate what that means for humanity, I think, for the most part. Like, even if you follow it, it gets normalized to a certain extent. But someone that's completely outside of it, it's like, oh, you're setting $100 million on fire every 3 days or whatever the investment is in this stuff. Obviously, your ability to think long-term about the implications of it are the thing. That's how you justify the spending, the experimentation, the failure, all of that stuff. And if you have no appreciation for that in general, right, it's like a lot of this appreciation comes from people in the technology world that have worked at or been exposed to the process of building something, and it isn't like, it's very different than how something is evaluated from a media perspective. What I think we had this conversation on here once is like, what's the, or it's a Balaji idea where it's like, what is the difference between you telling the story and the media telling the story? It's like the
Russell Conjugation, right? It's like
there has to be a villain.
Yeah, and the way he described it is like he uses this example always. He calls it the Russell Conjugation. It's the same fact presented in a different manner. I don't know what this exactly talking about, but it's almost similar. It's like, so like the news media, New York Times will say, oh, you're doxing someone. Like individual independent Twitter guy is doxing another person. But if we do the same thing, if we reveal somebody's information, address, and where they're located, we're doing investigative journalism.
Journalistic integrity,
yeah.
Exactly. Yeah.
So it's like the different interpretations of the same thing. I totally agree with you on the perception of the SpaceX explosion. Lack of imagination is such a great word, right? I mean, a phrasing. I mean, Bilal, how do you feel about this? Is like, we see this space stuff happen, and like, again, it feels normalized, or like there's just not as much excitement as you think there should be.
Yeah, it's a good question. I mean, I think just at the surface level, I think you often hear in the press or like just in conversations, just these kind of basic talking points, which if you don't do any more digging, you're kind of just going to be like, oh yeah, that kind of makes sense on the surface level. So often I'll hear people say, oh, there's so many problems on Earth. Why do these billionaires care about going to space? Like that's the framing around it, especially in the media. Like, and they frame it as like Elon Musk, Jeff Bezos, and Richard Branson just got this big dick measuring contest basically. And there's like, who's going to get to space first and who's going to get to, not space first, but Mars or whatever. And if you just read like, you know, the press and that's all you read like a headline, that might be the conclusion you get to, right? But when I think I read, did Tim Urban have a series on SpaceX, I think,
yeah,
right?
He wrote it.
I think I wrote, because he had a few, he had one Tesla, he had a few multiple parts, but that one was really enlightening. I almost like want an updated version of that because I think that was some time ago. And just understand like where they're trying to go.
Do you
like
remember the 50,000 foot reason? Like, I mean, well, we know.
To be honest, I don't remember too much. But
what's the meme of it? Why does Elon want to go to space? What is his ultimate reason? Like, I think most people know this one.
I don't.
Then the lie of consciousnly.
Yeah.
Oh yeah. Exactly. Okay.
He wants to. The reason he wants to go to Mars is because it's a multi-planetary species. Because, like you said, from the Tim Urban, we know why is like. There's no insurance if anything happens to Earth, right? It's like Mars is the closest planet that we can inhabit and put 1 million people on. And obviously it won't be easy and it's quite inhospitable, to be frank. But the idea that should humanity have an insurance policy just in case, like dinosaurs got wiped, asteroids are always, listen, we all seen Armageddon. Like, we know what's possible, right? That movie, even though it's 1% factually true, I mean, that's the meme of it, right?
But yeah, Trung, to that point, I think that goes to what Jack said before about imagination. I think no one sees an asteroid hitting the planet as a reasonable thing or realistic thing, the same way none of us thought the world would be shut down for a global pandemic 3 years ago, right? And so that's kind of where I've got to the point where I'm like, okay, I don't know enough about this. I know like 0.001% about this whole world. So I've like read enough about it to be like, oh, I understand beyond even just the business case, right? Like there's materials you can get from space. Even like the stuff they're doing with, was it Starlink or whatever?
Yeah.
Like that comes from, this sort of exploration as well. So yeah, I don't know much more than that, but I guess.
Why don't we layer it from, but I think you nailed it. So let's talk about the 50,000 foot, and let's work our way down to what's more practical, right? So we already discussed it. Jack said it is the extending the light of consciousness. But I mean, it is the idea that, there's been 100 billion people ever born and however many more in the future. If you care at all about humanity having, thousands of years ahead of us, potentially millions before the sun explodes or whatever, I think that's like 5 billion years. The whole point being, you have an insurance policy and can you be technologically advanced enough to get it, right? And Starship will be the vehicle that will ferry people to Mars. So what's fully operational, I mean, again, we're so far away from this, but which is why, again, Thursday when it happened was so important, because somebody had a great tweet. They're talking about there's like a fork in history. If it was such a disastrous launch and that thing was shut down forever, and mind you, on this Tuesday we're recording, the FAA yesterday said they are putting a pause on Starship to look at the launch capacity and look what future launches can do to be more environmentally friendly and make sure that all guardrails are put in place. But the point is, if this was truly a disaster, you're talking about shutting down what is meant to be the insurance policy. So just to give more background on this 50,000-foot level is, there's a world, take it with a grain of salt if you want, but they want this type of launch happening multiple times a day, fully reusable rockets. This is the holy grail of rocketry. I think most people can grok this is, why do you need reusable boosters, reusable spacecrafts? Because if you had to rebuild an airplane every single time we flew, it's impossible, right? It's financially...
Hey.
Yeah, go ahead.
Sorry, Trung. Did you see someone did an amazing like TikTok summary of this that I saw? Someone posted it on Twitter, where it was like the equivalent NASA rocket was like, I think in the tens of billions compared to Starship, and they want to get to a point where they're producing one of these every 3 days. Is that accurate?
Yeah,
literally rolling one off the production line, Starship every 3 days,
line, and launching multiple times a day and reusing it. What I will add about Starship, remember, this thing is 5 times the size of those landing rockets we see. So at this point, we've seen it all. It's become so normalized. That rocket that re-lands itself on a fucking barge in the middle of the ocean, that thing uses legs, right? Starship is so big, it can't even land on legs. So the idea to land Starship is, if you guys...
It has to be caught, right?
It has to be caught by the tower by something called Mechazilla. It's arms on the tower.
Incredible.
If you're listening, Google Mechazilla, or Rafa, if you could throw the Mechazilla GIF or video up on this recording. It's ridiculous, right? It truly...
There's also a great official SpaceX like 5-minute trailer. Have you seen that?
Is it with like concept images of what the future will look like?
Yeah, it's a render and they're like talking over it.
Okay, amazing.
It's sick.
Rafa,
I'll
got
find
us.
the link.
Okay, beautiful. So Rafa, obviously it sounds like science fiction, but so did landing your rocket on a barge, right? But to Jack's point, yeah, they want to send every day. So this is the number I read. This is still quite abstract because how far away, but to get basically a colony on Mars, we'd have to reach the world that Jack talked about. You're launching multiple times a day. If you did, I think 3 or 4 launches a day, every single day for a year, you could send, I think it is 1 million tons of stuff, of equipment to Mars. And so if we're talking 3 times a day for a year, then you could actually start a colony. I have no idea how far we are from that, based on just that first rapid, unplanned disassembly, which is the euphemism that SpaceX tweeted out. People comparing it to, you remember when Gwyneth Paltrow broke up with Chris Martin? They had a mutual uncoupling.
Nice.
There's like, this is a great a euphemism. All right, so that's the Mars part. That's obviously very far away. One level down then is, Bilal kind of talked about it, and Jack's talking about we don't have the imagination. Well, think about the space economy. I think, Bilal, you mentioned mining. Obviously, there's already a low Earth orbit, a constellation of satellites. So Starlink, which has 1 million paying subscribers, has 3,000 satellites in orbit. That's internet, the satellite internet, right? And they're actually not going to compete directly with, like your normal internet providers, because, running things under the ground and into your house shockingly is faster than a satellite internet. But obviously,
and there's already like an infrastructure, like it works for like big cities and stuff like that.
So, which goes to the next part, Bilal. You're going to know the answer. What is the purpose of Starlink?
I guess they're giving access to people where you don't get access to regular Verizon files or whatever your local thing is. Yeah.
Exactly.
And also planes. I think I saw a lot of private planes are starting to get it.
Yeah, planes are going to get it. So like they have coverage in 50 countries right now. So easily will cover the entire world eventually.
I've spoken to a couple of people who live on like an island and they use it.
And they have Starlink?
It's amazing, yeah.
What's the feedback on it?
I can't remember if they said they were getting it, or I've spoken to a few people that live in like the countryside who have used it and they have said it's great. And then I thought I spoke to someone on island, or maybe they were telling me they were going to get it at some point. I can't remember, but But apparently it's great. I mean, it's
To me,
not
man,
like
when you
Verizon
say-
Fios, like the way
Yeah.
I'm using it right now is like 500 meg download or something crazy. But yeah, I don't know. It's amazing for people who are in more remote areas, though. That's the target, I think.
Or development in the continent of Africa, where it's very difficult to lay out infrastructure, right?
Exactly.
Like, it's going to be obviously valuable. And obviously, Ukraine has been using it during the war, sometimes controversially. There's a lot of questions around who's paying for it. Is the DoD paying for it? Elon himself says he's put up at least $100 million to support it. But then SpaceX has chosen not to activate it in certain regions. So there's controversy around that. But then that's the next level. That's the whole point. Is that they found basically an incredible business model to pay for going to Mars, right? Because previously, the people paying you are like government entities that are trying to put stuff into space, go to ISS, International Space
I was going to
Station.
say, Trunks, how do they make money at the moment in terms of revenue? A lot of it is just
Launch
government
business,
contracts.
for the launch business, just sending stuff into space.
The satellites.
Which they fully monopolized this business, right? This year, in the year 2023, they will put up 80 to 90% of all the payloads that will be going up to space. That's more than the United States, China, India's got a launch business, or Blue Origin, all of it combined. They're doing more than all
It's
of them.
like Amazon and e-commerce dollars, right, Tron?
Or like Google with search, Bilal's former career.
Once a week, we got to get it in. We got to get it.
No, that's the second part of it, right? There's this business.
That's crazy,
like,
man.
Even just like the internet business itself, there's projections. Again, grain of salt, we're talking $10, $20 billion a year revenue just on the internet business, right? So that's a monster business.
How many locations do they launch from? They launch satellites from? Do you know? Does it matter?
They launched some off of from Florida, and then
Cape
Boca Chica.
Canaveral.
Yeah, but Boca Chica, Texas, is where they did Starship. And again, this is not all perfection and fully clean, right? But Boca Chica, Texas, is a very, very like lively habitat for many species. And listen, this is gonna fuck shit up, and it has. And but it's a job with FAA working with SpaceX to determine how much and where to do the rocketry to balance between the environment and, again, to Jack's point, top of the things like what is our match? How much does it matter to have this insurance in place, right? Because I think, Bilal, you brought it up. It's like about COVID and the pandemic. We can sit with our thumbs in our asses, right? And just like no care for thinking about insurance and just like insurance for humanity. So there's got to be a balance somewhere between, let's insure humanity and yes, there's going to be some ecological damage. Let's try to minimize it. So I think that's kind of where the Starship situation is at.
So, Trunk, can I ask a quick question? Just follow up to what you're saying. So, to my original point where I don't believe this, but a lot of people say, why should we care about going to space? You kind of mentioned about surviving, the human race surviving in case of a crazy event. Now, apart from that, which is a very valid reason, are there other reasons that I'm not thinking of that we should also care about it?
Well, I'll give a big one. So in the 1960s, so JFK famously said we should go to the moon when he was elected. We want to be on the moon by the end of this decade. Part of that was space race versus the Soviet Union, right? So the Soviets sent the first person to space. And during the Cold War, that was a huge psychological and propaganda win for them. I mean, you could talk about we haven't talked about the national defense angle, right? Like the future of war is going to be drone warfare. It's going to be satellite and autonomous aerial vehicles. And the reality is you have to have a constellation of satellites to win that war. So there's a national defense area, right? That's what we haven't talked about. And we touched on it with Russia v. Ukraine, but China has straight up said that Starlink is a threat, is a national security threat. So the other part that I'll add, though, to answer your question directly is the amount of technology that comes off of space exploration is insane. And it's almost impossible to compute the value that has come from it. But I'll give you guys an idea that, so NASA, as part of its mandate, has to commercialize any of the technology that it used to get people to space, right? So as we all know, 1969, we did get someone to the moon. I think at the peak of spending for NASA, they're spending 2% of US GDP, something insane. So just to give an idea what that would be, 10%, 2% of GDP now would be $300 to $400 billion. of US GDP. So that was being spent just to get people to the moon. So to answer Bilal's question very directly, I'm going to read a tweet I sent out.
But even that is funny, the way you said that, just to get people to the moon. Is kind of fucking ridiculous.
Yeah,
statement.
that's a good
right?
point.
Like, it's the greatest
crazy
undertaking man has ever like a technological undertaking, right? People forget like the computer on the craft that got I think it's Apollo 8, I can't remember what it was, got to the moon. There's more power by like 1,000
Unlocked to so much
Sega
more.
Genesis
Yeah.
had more.
Dude,
Yeah.
our iPhone is like 10,000 times more powerful.
Yeah.
So let me answer Bilal's question directly. It's called spin-off technologies. I'm sure part of it is, propaganda too, right? It's like, hey, we're spending all this money. Here, look at this cool stuff we're making. But I'm going to list you guys some cool stuff. You tell me whether or not it was worth it. NASA research has led to the development of 2,000 commercialized products and services. They call these NASA spin-off technologies. There's been so many spin-off technologies from NASA. They have a whole website and a print publication to document them.
Before you list them, how does it get from NASA to commercial? They have a partner, or they license it, or how does it work?
They license it at a very reasonable. Well, I'll give you a very clear one. Black & Decker Dustbusters. You guys remember Dustbuster vacuum? That is NASA
the
technology.
handheld one, you mean?
Yeah, exactly. So they're like, here's technology we use, vacuums that we had to do for our space travel. We're licensing it to Black & Decker. Yeah, so they have corporate partners. Some other ones, insane. Invisalign.
That shit should be free, man. That shit should be like, we should own that. Paying tax.
Yeah. Well, I love how Jad's getting like, tax season. All right, hold on. Let me rip off a couple, and then you can go on your tax rant. Invisalign, CAT scans, baby formula, memory foam, home insulation, the computer mouse, ear thermometer, freeze-dried food, cell phone cameras, because you need small cameras for space, scratch-resistant lenses, water purification, so they use that for the pools now, swimming pools. So if you ever swam in a swimming pool, say thank you to NASA. Athletic shoes, the shock absorbers, and then the Black & Decker Dustbuster vacuums. 3 urban legends which are not from NASA are Tang, Velcro, and Teflon. If those 3 did come from NASA, that would be incredible. But to answer your question directly, Bilal, that is like what people should be thinking about. The material scientists coming out from SpaceX for what they're doing, I guess granted, they're a private organization, so you can be like, oh, what, Elon gets to own it? I don't know what the licensing arrangement from any technology.
But that hasn't been typical of his behavior anyway, right? All the Tesla stuff is
the Tesla stuff's open source, yeah.
So I don't think that would be the case, but who knows?
Yeah, and exactly, right? The point being, you get all this spin-off technology. So Bilal, does that convince you of the value of it, or is it still just kind of like nebulous?
No, I think that answers it for sure. I think this is me actually thinking now, not those people I was referencing before. So when I've spoken to those people in the past, I've always just found it to be that a lot of those people have just read a headline and they've kind of formed their decision already because of they don't like Elon, they don't like billionaires, whatever you want to say. And so because of that, it just fits that narrative of like, why are these rich people going and doing stuff when we've got problems here on Earth? Which I get that line of logic, but it is easily debunked once you go a step deeper.
Let's dismantle the biggest one, right? The most famous one that involved Elon was UN World Food Hunger. Like we could solve
if you spend this
hunger
amount of
by
money
$7
on
billion. It's like, okay, give me your exact point by point plan, and
that's a good point. Yeah.
But I think the World Hunger one, which gets brought up a lot, is actually really bad. Is like it's not actually about the food production. We have more than enough food production here on Earth. It's logistics, it's supply chains, and it's corrupt governments. You're trying to send stuff to governments around the world, which are not necessarily looking out for the benefits of their citizens. They're finding ways to reroute the food, steal it, not even storing it properly. Like I think 30-40% of global food production goes to waste. It's not. Do we have enough food? There's other problems here that money may not be able to solve.
Yeah, that's a good example. And I think even just like water is another one. Obviously, I worked in the past.
Dude, this is great.
So like water is interesting. I don't know the numbers exactly anymore, but it's roughly like 1 in 7 people don't have access to clean drinking water. Yeah, it used to be 663 million. I think it's actually more now because they changed the definition. That is obviously a terrible thing, but a lot of people are like, well, why is this still the case? Is it just because governments haven't got their act together? A lot of the time there is government problems related to this, but a lot of it is just there's so many people forget how many people live in like rural areas, right? Like we're used to thinking of New York Austin, Nashville, Vancouver. But like if you go to the rest of the world, there's hundreds of millions, billions of people living in remote villages, in, you know, like places that are hard to get to. So again, you can't just like say, here's, you know, $1 trillion and now that solves all the world's war problems. Like it's not that simple. There's a lot of work and infrastructure that needs to be put in place. So I think that would be a similar example. I think we just lost Trung. Did you lose Trung there as well, Jack? Our weekly Trung drop off?
Exactly this point in time every week. Yeah.
Yeah. Hits the load.
His credits ran out.
He's going to swipe his card right now to get his top up. But yeah, that's basically. Mate, does that? What were you going to say? Does that remind you of something? Did you ever have
the pay as you go thing just made me crack up, man. Getting the voucher and scratching off the thing orange. Yeah. Do you remember that?
Mate, I don't know if you ever had this in the UK, but when we were very poor, you'd have to go to a local store and basically like pay for your energy and stuff. And you'd go with your cards.
Yeah.
And right. It was like that's what I was thinking of when he dropped off.
I worked in the co-op. Bilal. So
you'd be topping them up, yeah.
Familiar with all those systems, yeah.
Anyway, we could just keep this going since Trung dropped off. But what do you reckon, mate? Is there anything left on the space stuff that you would want answered if you were on that side that we were discussing?
I think my closing thought on it is like understanding that you kind of have to overshoot the thing you're trying to develop to make something new.
That works.
I think that's like an interesting, massive misconception too, is the process of innovation is like, we're going to define exactly what it is we're trying to do and we're going to stop exactly there. It's like, that's not how research, development, any kind of breakthrough works. It's like, the most extreme version of it is being developed by a small number of people, and then the byproduct of that becomes products, ideas, discoveries, things that like flow back down to more and more
Jack,
people and are easier to commercialize.
F1 is the greatest example, right?
Right.
F1 technology. They're pushing these vehicles to the limits.
Yeah.
Like the fuel efficiency, like gearboxes that are developed for F1, like even like
Dude, the
fuel injection systems.
The fuel injection, the rear view mirror came from like racing cars. And Jack nailed it. They're pushing these things to the limit. So obviously something good enough for F1 probably could be good enough for just the road, right?
Yeah,
exactly.
And I think it's always like a scale question and like context of like how much a company spends, for example, developing their F1 team versus like building cars for millions of people a year. Like in isolation, it looks like a ridiculous exercise, but when you put it in the context of what they do, like altogether is like a small amount of research and development, probably like, you know, the Apples of the world. I don't know, Trung, you might have the exact numbers on this encyclopedia, but the number of products that get developed and never get shipped, or Bilal, Google, right? You have these divisions of people that work on moonshots, skunk works, blah, 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 blah. And sometimes they kick off an innovation that's like completely changes the business. Like maybe AirPods is like a good example of that. Like at Apple, where it's like 10 years ago, you would have looked at that and be like, that's sci-fi. Nobody's ever going to figure that out. Wireless headphones are fucking like useless. They don't really work. They have this massive breakthrough and that becomes a like huge part of their business at this point.
That's a good... Yeah, and I think what you said about space earlier, one of you was like Jack, what you just said there is like you normally create something and a lot more comes from it. And like space is the ultimate version of that because we don't know what's out there basically, right? Like we know some of what's out there, but you go out there, you're like, damn, what the hell is this? The same way when people, you know, left, Columbus came here and found that there were people here already, but they, you know, found all this new stuff. And the same way people have explored different countries in the past, that is on the same planet. When you go to space, it's like next level, obviously. So that's actually not something I thought about. Like they're really just a technology company building stuff, getting us to space. And once you're in space, whether that's NASA or SpaceX or whoever, you're going to find all this new shit that is hopefully useful here. And Trung, you mentioned specifically the mining space mining, I think you said was the phrase. Is that the
Yeah,
right phrase?
I don't know anything about
Okay.
the financials, but I've heard some absolutely insane stuff about like
The
if
amount
you
of
come
stuff.
back with like a little rock, you're like the richest person.
Yeah. It's basically like, you go to Central Park or Prospect Park near me. You just see those dudes wearing those headphones, just looking for stuff with like the
Yeah.
metal detector guys.
Or
They're
at
just
the beach,
Oh.
right?
beating around.
I gotta
It's
find
like
this
that, but
article.
on
We should-
steroids.
I gotta find this article, put it in the show notes. But the idea of information being the unlock for how we operate as a species. Like somebody figured out how to turn coal into energy, right? But for hundreds or thousands of years before that, hundreds of thousands of years, nobody knew that that was possible. It's like information is the unlock for, to use a ridiculous example, the Tesla powered by the sugar cube that Sailor blessed us with on episode 66, right? There's
I love that you know the episode number too. Respect.
Oh, mate, I spent so long on that trailer. I remember that. The idea that there's a material that exists that could drastically change the energy equation on Earth, for example.
Yeah.
Right? Like the amount of energy that comes from burning coal relative to the secondary, tertiary effects of burning coal, we can all agree can be done better in some way, shape, or form. If you stop looking for ways to improve that, then you're arguing against the thing that you're using to build your case, which in my mind is just moronic.
Yeah.
Right? And you're not very, very hard to convince someone of that. And also, it is frustrating that something like this isn't now a unifying narrative, right?
Yeah.
Like in the same way, and I wasn't around when, JFK is talking about going to the moon. So maybe it was the same thing, right? People going ape shit about that, waste of money, like we got other stuff to be doing, but like maybe it was exactly the same.
I thought it was more positive from the speaking to parents and stuff. Like,
yeah, it was.
Everyone was watching
truly-
it together.
Yeah.
The way it's been told, the way I understand it is,
Yeah.
it was. I'm just saying, like, without Twitter, was there still, people on the other side of that
That's an
argument? Maybe it's
interesting
more
point,
of
yeah.
a human
Well,
nature
they
thing where we're like rose tinted.
out, right?
Oh, everybody loved it, and now
Yeah.
nobody
Yeah,
loves it.
that's a good point. Yeah. Or
Well,
was
they
it
wouldn't
also
have
just
they wouldn't
there
have
was
a
one?
platform. They wouldn't have a platform.
Right. I was
Like
gonna
a
say,
CBS,
this-
NBC, ABC.
You
where
had
it's
like BBC
True.
News in the UK, and that's
Yeah.
all that was covering it. And you're going to believe what is basically on the TV. Now you've got everyone fighting with, and everything's become politicized more so now, I think, I think things have always been politicized, but it feels like even more so now. Like wearing a mask became politicized. Elon Musk has become politicized. Like Joe Rogan became, like if you speak to someone and
Investment advice has become politicized.
Exactly. So it's just like it's a weird
well,
one.
Let me put a pin on this space convo because I know we got other topics to cover. But something I want to make sure I made clear was the reason why having such a larger vehicle, which is what Starship is, we call it 4 to 5 times more payload, is and fully reusable in that world is things are way cheaper to send to space, right? It's like if it's bigger and you can do it more often, like the cost of something in space. I think the number from the All In podcast was before Starship, it'll be about $15 million. Variable cost per 1,000 tons, but now it goes down to about 2 million. So it's like 80 to 90% cost savings. Just think about what
That's
an 80,
wild.
90% cost savings will do to your life. Obviously, quite a bit of ways until we get there. Anybody that saw the explosion and saw what happened to the launch pad has some issues that need to be fixed. But just trying to give some perspective on, and Bilal before this episode was just like, Trump having been following this a lot. Love to understand the 50,000 foot. I think you kind of knew. It's just good to kind of stack it. Is here's a 100-year reason why this
definitely.
is important, and here's a 10-year reason.
I think that's cool, and I think we covered a lot. Jack, anything else on that before we wrap it up? Before we move on to the next stuff?
No, that was good, boys. That was good.
Great, nice one. Yeah, let us know what you think on space as well. What your thoughts are in the comments. What you're excited about. Are you going to be on that first trip to Mars? What's going on there? Okay, so let's move on really quickly. I think let's do the follow up to the AI music chat with Grimes. We can just knock that out real quick here.
Yeah.
So Grimes, have you guys? I think Trung, you've spoken to Grimes before, right?
Yeah, we exchanged.
Are we allowed to say that?
Just a couple of messages were exchanged, but she had expressed because she wrote on one of the threads, not one of the threads, one of the tweets I did about Coachella, and
Sick.
she's an independent artist and has always kind of experimented, I actually interviewed her manager, and he's also quite into startups and experimenting how technology can change music. Dowdo Leonard. Anyways, the reason we bring it up is Grimes last week tweeted out that she will let people use her likeness and voice to create music, and she'll split 50-50 royalties on it. Bilal, do you have
I've got a tweet open here, so I thought I'll just share the screen.
This is the reason we brought this up. This is germane to our chat last week about Drake and The Weeknd and how they were trying to.
She basically said, I'll split 50% royalties on any successful AI generated song that uses my voice. Same deal as I would have with any other artist I collab with. Feel free to use my voice without penalty. I have no label or no legal bindings. And then there was a second tweet here, talking with my team. If you register music with us, we can collect and pay out royalties direct to anyone who uses AI, Grimes, vocals, uses smart contracts. The future really is now. This is so cool. I brought that one up as well because it's very NIA, talking about the smart contract life there.
She's combining the AI and the payment methods of crypto. She's very forward-looking.
Smart. Yeah, very forward-thinking either way. And I think the reason I wanted to just quickly cover it is because last week we talked about 50,000-foot view. We talked about Drake specifically. Drake was pissed off about this, understandably. We talked about why big artists might be, most artists, traditional ones anyway, are going to be annoyed about this. But Grimes is actually a really big artist. She's not like a tiny unknown artist, right? Like she's been very successful in her own way and she's independent. And for her to say, I'm up for trying this out, that my point, I think I mentioned it, was someone will ride the wave the way Soulja Boy did with LimeWire.
Yeah.
Right? That was kind of a joke, but also kind of true. So again, I don't know how realistic this is and if the things are in place for them to be able to actually do this. But I think that's kind of cool that she is even like thinking about doing that. So anything else from you guys on that? What you think about it?
I love Jack's thoughts actually. Combining the smart contract payout with the AI music, thoughts?
Put it on the chain, as Jack would always say.
Yeah, I think the interesting next technical challenge is how you add attribution on the streaming platforms, because that's where it's like like you're not going to be uploading it to Grimes' Spotify account, for example. So I haven't done enough digging into what she's plugging there, but if the royalties are constrained to the whatever the platform is that is responsible for the contract, chances are you're not going to get that distribution that you would on a Spotify type thing. So like the real unlock in my mind is like Spotify eventually adds this thing where it's like Grimes, using Grimes source material, but not Grimes, and you can connect that to, I don't know, the infrastructure of how they collect royalties.
Tag her name, right? Like you'd here's a song I'm uploading, tag this person, similar how YouTube, Bilal, it's content ID-ish, right?
Yeah, basically. I mean, I guess to me, there's two parts to this discussion. One is the philosophical debate around, is this a right thing for us to, that she's even willing to do it? And then the second is like the tactical thing of like, how does this actually work out in practice? And like you said, like the content ID, if you didn't listen to last week's episode, is basically a fingerprinting technology where anytime you upload a video onto YouTube, TikTok, etc., it gets scanned, and they can figure out there's music playing in the background the same way we're used to using Shazam, essentially. And they can say this is owned by Universal Music and there's a copyright claim, and then the music company can monetize that and they make money from you using the clip. The difference here is it's just using the voice. There's not, like, if you think of it as a database, like if you've got all of Grimes' music, 100 songs, let's just say, putting her actual voice, the equivalent of just her voice, is different. So the technology for fingerprinting, I'm sure they can develop it so it works. But to actually get it to work with just her voice being, on any sort of music or any kind of variation of it could be sped up, it could have some distortion, it could be like some, echo or whatever, all the different reverb or whatever. So that's the part where just technically, I think that can easily be developed over time, but I don't know if it's necessarily there yet. Maybe it is. And then the
she should start a platform. That's my response.
Yeah. Well, just
title.
yeah. I mean, and then the third part is what Jack just said. There is like, how do you actually get that onto the existing infrastructure where people listen to music, which is Spotify, Apple Music, YouTube, basically, and then I guess radio is an extension of all that. So I don't know how you would actually do that technically. Maybe it would just be more a limited thing where she's like, anyone who wants to do this, sign up with me, and you'll get approval.
One question I have is like, how does that work now if you have like a feature? So there must be infrastructure to like funnel royalties to featured artists, right? So maybe it's just a case of like her approving features on existing platforms.
I'm assuming she'll be doing the same.
Grimes. Yeah. But there is also an opportunity to be like, hey, I'm going to launch this platform. Any artist that wants to put all of their material up as like a creative playground for people to remix, and also like step into this moment of everybody being fascinated by this stuff, as opposed to making it and then like crowbarring it into the distribution that already exists. Obviously, it's got very hard to achieve network effect on a new platform, but if anybody's going to do it, if anybody has the like positioning, the personality, the like, it's hard to imagine somebody like more traditional of a thinker pivoting into this. It feels like a great opportunity to like start a new behavior and build the technology that supports this kind of like this way of working as a music producer or artist or whatever else.
I agree. The only thing I'd say is I would see that like doing our own platform thing as like version 5 of this. Like version 1 would be like, basically she put up a link and said, if you want to apply to do this work with me, like fill out this form essentially, and then they're going to approve a certain number of people. And once they still can have that, like, you go and create using my voice, I've given you permission, but you're kind of like a vetted person. And then once that music is created, the stuff that bubbles to the top, they can officially put it even in her own, you know, like Spotify, basically, like Grimes music, but maybe there's a designation that this is like a remix version using a voice or whatever. I don't know how that would work, but I can't imagine.
This elf.tech might be it. Might be what they're doing. So
is that, that was in the original tweet.
Right now? Well, actually, when you guys were talking, all I could think about was, Jack, like how you get to set royalties on your platforms that you use. It seems like, Jack, would it make a lot of sense for these existing NFT platforms to somewhat integrate an idea like this? Or is that too complicated?
The problem is, I think most of the platforms have just devolved into these marketplaces that people try to make music NFTs a thing. They never seem to take off, probably because they're like they're not like natively shareable in the same way that art is. That's haven't spent that much time thinking about it, but that's definitely like delayed that kind of behavior of people collecting music. But I do think it is one of the most simple and obvious uses of a smart contract, right? It's like the four of you deployed this asset. Yeah. Four of you deployed this asset. One of you has 50% of the back end upside. One of you has 25, and then 12.5. Like, to me, there's a huge opportunity there. And weirdly, like, putting these things on existing marketplaces that have been built around different types of assets, which is either like one artist making stuff or like a company building a team and then like making a membership pass or whatever. The royalty in those instances is more about like transfer of ownership, versus royalty in this instance is like consumption of the product. Like, you don't necessarily have to own the product to get the royalty. It's like the 0.001 cent. Like, it would be so amazing if Spotify did like a
I was just thinking that
off product, right? They did like a on-chain Spotify and just played around with this concept of like artists can start to basically interact with the market in a completely different way. Like, you have and a lot of artists just can't do this because they've signed deals that are either predatory or like prevent them from doing anything outside of like getting permission from the label. But people like Grimes, without any of those restraints, restrictions, whatever, can just experiment with this stuff. And the economics of it right now is all ads too, right? It's like who was I talking to last week? this idea of like it's either art or ads. There's basically the two things that are happening in a internet economy. You have like people creating stuff and then people trying to sell stuff based on the attention that's on the stuff that somebody else has created.
Crazy.
It's very simple, right?
When you think about it, look at the top companies in the world, top 10. Obviously, Facebook, Meta, and Google, they're ads based. Amazon has a $30 billion ad business. Microsoft has a 10. Everything comes back to ads on the internet. It's just like that's actually when people ask about the Twitter situation, I'm just like, the reality is this. We've talked about it. Just have a really good ad platform. That's where it's really headed, right? We've been toying around this Twitter subscriptions, and like I pay for Twitter Blue, and I can't say it enough. Top articles is an amazing feature. It's just the idea that the ads thing it just works. It just works.
Inescapable, man.
Yeah, there's a way to do it well.
And like,
can I just add one little?
It's unlocked a lot of. It's unlocked a lot of. I don't know if this is maybe too grandiose of a word, but like democratization of access to certain technologies, right? Ads, you cannot argue, have created a model where people can get things for free that costs a lot of money to make.
They subsidize the internet. They made the internet free, basically, yeah. And we don't like I hate going on a site with 72 ads as much as anyone, but like I also don't want to pay for that site most of the time. And if I did, if they gave me an option, like even now, you know, like I think of Patreons that I pay for podcasts. Like there's about 3 podcasts I pay for, and mainly I'm doing it like to help them out, but they also normally take the ads out, which I kind of like being able to skip. So.
And you're like the super user of that, like as a, like
exactly.
That is
8 hours a day.
Such a massive edge case. Crazy.
Definitely.
Bilal,
Exactly.
all he does is walks around New York listening to podcasts.
But it's such a joke meme now.
Or recording podcasts. That's
or
it.
Recorded, yeah, definitely. I checked my app. The average time is 4 hours a day, 4.5 hours a day.
Well,
okay,
that's insane.
It's pretty
if
crazy.
you can record podcasts while you walk, it's game over for you. You'd be, you would literally be the
Just
next
a
Joe
walking
Rogan
mic.
if you could just do.
That'll be jokes. Yeah,
Wait,
it's crazy.
I just want to add 2 things and then throw Bilal a question. I know we already did the Google Bilal joke, so I'm not going to bring it up again. But so the 2 criticisms, the 2 things that I saw brought up when Grimes launches, I read through the comments. 2 things I did want to flag was, number 1 is, and I think she addressed this also, she's slightly concerned about, you could use her voice to do some really gnarly and negative stuff.
Oh, damn, yeah. Didn't even think about that.
I think you guys kind of brought it up a bit, but she's I think there's like a little bit of vetting going on because she's like, here, you sign up to this list. This is how you get paid out. Actually, that's probably the layer of vetting, right? To automate that and make that scalable, I'll have to change. But she might be listening to some of these tracks like, yeah, let's not monetize this one. And like, so there's that. The other part of it, which is a very interesting, is just the idea of this AI hype cycle happens so fast, right? We were talking about the Pope quote a month ago. Now it's just completely, like, you know how it opens up, so talking about how media is just flat.
Yeah, it's crazy.
And everything's just flat. And all these crazy things are happening, and we're just like, next thing, right? Oh, the largest and most powerful rocket in the history of mankind was just lifted off a launch pad and flew 40 kilometers in the air. Oh, cool. What's AI music doing next, right? So there's the world we talked about it last week, and I could not agree with this point more than you guys brought up from last week. The idea of just appointment viewing, appointment listening, appointment cultural anything. What are we all talking about, right? Like, we were talking about, hey, Bilal and Trung can have their own individualized music, but no one else is going to listen to that, no one else is going to care, and there's no social element, there's no network effect. So I do feel like this is, and not necessarily her thing is gimmicky. I think some people will win. Like, I love the way that Bilal said it. It's like, there will be a soldier boy kind of individual that comes out of this, right? Somebody won the auto-tune race, which was T-Pain.
T-Pain.
The soldier boy of AI.
Yeah,
Soldier Boy of AI, right? Soldier Boy cracked the streaming. Like T-Pain is Mr. Auto-Tune. Like, these technologies come by, somebody gets associated with it.
That's true, yeah.
And there's only enough attention that can aggregate in one
right?
spot.
So
basically.
Grimes being first mover on this is like, she's it.
Smart.
Now, historically, that's her. She's the first one to have embraced it as far as the 99% of the public is known. So she very well may just win based on that, right? But the question then becomes from these other people that do it. But yeah, so I think those are the 2 other thoughts I want to add. And then the question I had for Bilal, which is super interesting. This is from Nilay Patel from The Verge, a both editor of The Verge. He said
Directly to Bilal.
Yeah, I was going to, yeah.
no, not because of the last name, not related, because it's Google, YouTube. He goes, Google and YouTube have a massive tension around copyright right now, because they couldn't even take down the Drake Weekend song based on copyright, based on traditional copyright, because like the labels are saying, oh no, we own this song, right? Well, nobody, Ghostwriter 77, the guy that made that Drake Weekend song, he owns that song. He made it. So what are you
And
copywriting?
he didn't put their name on it, right? He didn't. Right? He didn't.
No, he.
I
their name?
think
that's a
he
great
probably
question.
wrote
actually.
Drake Weekend, maybe, but I can't remember.
But you're allowed to do that on YouTube. You're allowed to do that. But this is what they got him on the copyright. This is the takedown. They got him for saying Metro Boomin was a producer.
Oh, so
yeah.
it's inaccurate. Yeah.
No, but it's like, but there's like a cat and mouse game going on, because the guy can just take that out now. He can just take the Metro
It's
Boomin
like a
attribution
policy.
And no
out.
credit,
basically
like
a policy.
not
No
crediting. Yeah,
And then there's no so now they don't copyright. So what Google has to do then is Google has to do what all these artists are suing like Getty Images for. They're going one level below. They're going to the foundational models. They're saying, oh no, I'm not hitting you up on the copyright on this one song. I'm saying the entire AI tool was built on stolen materials, trained on stolen materials. And this is the conundrum for Google during the Bilal. So this is huge, right? YouTube is a $30 billion business for Google. It's probably 10 to 20% of their valuation, if not more. If they say, basically, if they agree with the label and say, you're right, training the underlying models is where this where this illegal thing is happening, they're kneecapping their entire generative AI business, Bard, all the tools are doing for OpenAI.
You're saying because it's not consistent with
you
how
have to
generative
pick,
AI
right?
works.
How will you treat generative AI?
Yeah.
Is
That's
the
a great
model
point.
illegal or is it not illegal? If it's not illegal, they're going to have problems on
They're
YouTube.
in a pickle, to be fair, with
Yeah,
that, because it's
right?
like either way they're kind of fucked, right? So
Yes.
what I was going to say on that, Trung, is like I'll comment really quickly on how they're dealing with it now versus like the past. So like with anything like this, it's kind of like boring stuff, but it's basically YouTube policy versus law, right? Like, so there's like a law of a country, and obviously laws within different countries. Like a Saudi Arabia music law is different to the US, I assume, right? So that even as Google as a company, that would come up all the time. People, not just in YouTube, but Google as well. Someone would say, hey, this person, like even in Google search, someone would say, this person's written, they're bidding on my brand term, and they're writing something in the ad text that is about me, that is against the law or whatever. And what I've quickly found out was the law of the country is not always the law of Google's policy, and Google's policy needs to be made based on, one, what the company thinks is in their best interest, their users and advertiser interests, but also like there's policies for each country, like I said. So they kind of need to account for that. And music is a really interesting one because, again, the law in Saudi Arabia for even, maybe not even say Saudi Arabia, let's just say Europe somewhere versus US might be very different from
like
copyright
GDPR
law.
even. Like
Exactly.
saying somebody's name in an ad, you can't do there, right? In the States, you could be like, our competitor is a piece of shit.
Yeah.
You could
Yeah. Dress it up as the other compare.
Yeah.
So that's all like the way Apple and Microsoft had that back in the day, that rivalry.
Epic,
so that's
man.
one
great ads.
Amazing ads, yeah. But so that's kind of like how they have to think about it. That's why it's very tricky for them. At the same time, their YouTube specifically is in a very different place than it was 10 years ago or whatever, right? So when I forgot the year all that stuff kicked off with the labels last time, and it was this historic case with them that essentially Content ID kind of came out of
streaming
that.
stuff, or is this different?
Around that music stuff. So there was this ongoing debate for a long time. How do you treat our music? And eventually Google came up with this thing we've referenced several times on the pod now, Content ID, that was a technological solution to a otherwise analog problem, really, right? Or like a kind of real world problem. And they needed time to create a policy and then create a technological solution that accounted for all those factors. People streaming music on their phone, the way people can easily just upload a video with music in it. And now with all the shorts, like the whole culture of shorts is you put music in the background, right? So that's a whole different level, I'm sure, as well. So that I think the difference is back then, it was more important for Google to set you know, in my opinion anyway, to make a stand and say, we're going to need music on the platform and we're going to kind of like fight for that. And they kind of went up against those labels instead of just lying down and saying, oh,
Well,
yeah,
they
we'll
gave them
just
an
ban
option,
music.
right? Like, we're going to get you paid.
They came with a solution. It sounds like the most like MBA intern thing to do, but they came not with a problem, but a solution to the table. And they said, here is, sorry, Trung, MBA, but you know what I'm saying? It's like
what
a
I'm
real
saying
good
is
thing
the way
to do.
this story ends is this. Bilal's like, and I was at intern.
Yeah, in the bin.
Yeah. No, I think Bilal, as you were talking, all I could think about is how you're literally addressing Jack's initial point.
Yeah.
Some platform needs to figure this out. It's very much in Google's interest to figure out how to integrate AI and get these artists paid, right?
But Trung, my last point on it was the Google of 2008 or 2010 or whatever is very different to 2023.
Yeah.
I think their relationship with the labels is way better probably now than it was back then because they've made them a bunch of money. They've got 10, 15 years of a relationship where everyone's, you know, been generally happy, or at least, I mean, it's never been fully happy. And even stuff like the people, right? Like, I forgot, is it Leo Cohen? I think he's still at Google. I think he's head of YouTube Music. He's like a legend in the music industry. He comes from like hip hop. Someone like him, I assume, was hired to ease those, you know, relationships with those labels and say, look, we've got an insider here who understands your needs as much as ours. So I think my assumption is their stance on something like this will be very much in making sure the labels are happy, but they're going to make sure that they don't shoot themselves in the foot with the generative AI stuff. Now, the problem is there's going to be politics within YouTube versus the rest of Google, because YouTube cares about YouTube. They don't really necessarily care about the rest. That's their priority. Go on, Jack.
Man, spin them off, dude. That's a massive business.
Yeah, that's true. Sorry, Jack.
This idea of like, no, it's just as you were talking, this idea of like where artists break. Like Bieber was YouTube, like generation YouTube, right? And I'm curious now whether or not that is more on the short type
TikTok
platforms.
or something.
Like TikTok is now where artists get their break.
Probably, yeah.
And
I think YouTube is still up there, to be fair, but I think the pop is on TikTok like viral, and then
I'm not trying to tank the Google stock here, Bilal. Still a lot of value. Still a lot of value.
I've never made that joke, Bilal. That is a Jack Butcher joke.
No, but I agree with you. There's like at its peak, like when it was breaking through culture for the first time, YouTube is like where like an artist used to be like getting discovered on TV or radio, and then it's YouTube, then it's TikTok, then it's whatever else.
It's the
like,
channel U of the internet, basically.
Right, there you go. Which platform has the lowest friction to getting your work up and distributed? And
what channel U?
Even if they lose, so it's like a niche UK hip hop channel in the UK.
2000s, legendary, yeah. Put a lot of people on the map.
Indeed. And that to me is like the platform that even if they like bleed cash for a bunch of years, the idea of like becoming the place where artists are discovered and they're like the culture around their art grows, that weirdly does come back to like a lot of these policies, right? It's like the very much driven by what the platform allows to propagate. So I wonder if even the TikTok argument, where I don't know how much they comply with the what's the acronym for the
content ID stuff?
DMCA stuff. Yeah, like I don't know if they are as on top of that.
I feel like they have something similar now. Trung, do you know about
that?
Probably. Did Jack ask Dan Runs his exact question? He's like, Dan, what's going on with TikTok? I feel like they have every single song. No, you asked that, right? You're like,
oh yeah, I do. Library,
I feel like they have way more. Like this is a subtle difference, but in my mind, like the song or the ability to add a song as a feature.
Yeah.
Like YouTube, you're not making content on YouTube, right? You make it on your computer. It's fucking hard to even get a song to put it on a video. It's like I don't even know where to start with that. Like, either rip it somewhere, like buy. You can't. Where'd you buy an MP3?
No, you have to. Yeah, you're right.
Do it.
You normally have to get like for our theme song is a free, like license free song.
You rip it off and then put it back on. the friction is crazy. The friction is insane. And that's like, if I'm Universal or whatever, I'm like, put a plugin in there. Like, put me in After Effects or put me in whatever the editing software is. Let people pull the song and then, you know, have it tag in the same way that song is literally a filter on TikTok. Like, you can filter videos by the song. And if you, like, get this, like, worm in your brain, you can watch 250 different clips
My money
of this
don't
same
jiggle
song.
jiggle. Yeah, you just go into all of
I
those.
just laugh and you can see the spit roll. Yeah, God, hilarious. I'm just imagining Bilal just like his 800th rendition of the same song. The first 20 seconds of the same song.
The other thing, boys, is that like Jack saying, TikTok was Musically, right? Like that was the DNA of the company. Was remember in the beginning it was, we just thought of kids doing funny dances, and now I'm going on there for like, you know, like workout routine
taxes.
TikTok or like Spanish.
Like, taxes.
Oh my God, bro, can you imagine?
Like with the weekend on the back.
Literally.
Hey, how do I get this special deduction for
that is definitely a part of TikTok. There's definitely a TikTok part of that
TikTok.
micro niche.
Yeah, man.
Incredible. No, it's a good point, Jack. That's definitely a good point. Boys, we've got 5 minutes to quickly just let's finish off that last part as well.
We got hard?
I thought you did, but yeah, we can.
No, I'll extend this just so we can have a
all
little
right,
bit more
let's keep
juice
it
on the
going. All
Buzzfeed
right,
news.
anything else on the AI music? I thought that was a good chat, though.
That was juicy, man.
More than I originally thought we would cover, so good stuff. All good? All right.
Remains
Jack,
to
you
be
look
seen.
like you had a
we'll
thought.
see what happens.
All right.
No, we'll see what happens. I got plenty.
All right, perfect.
Save for next
Let's
week.
finish off with our favorite topic, the demise of legacy media. So, well, I mean, we got Tucker, Don Lemon,
Okay, well,
Fox
let's talk
News,
through crazy last week, all right?
and then end of BuzzFeed News, which is not. I mean, it's an interesting question. What are they? They're
Crazy
not,
that's traditional. Yeah.
that's basically feels
crazy.
like the Web
We're
build, like the
lumping
Web
'em. We're
2
lumping 'em
version.
with 'em.
Yeah. We're lumping BuzzFeed. You're right, man. It's
Boomer.
crazy.
To me, they feel like legacy, even though they're not.
Vice, Vox, BuzzFeed, which is obviously 2010s. At this point, they're legacy media. Like, they were a different time and place, right? Like that. So let me just list off what Bilal talked about. Yesterday was Monday. Tucker Carlson was pushed out of Fox. Don Lemon resigned and or was pushed out of CNN. BuzzFeed News shut down over the past week.
He definitely didn't resign. He was definitely sacked.
Oh, Lemon?
Yeah, definitely. He
Well,
posted
'cause
something like,
CNN
nobody
said-
told me this. Yeah.
He says he
CNN
got
did.
sacked. CNN's like, no, we said he could come talk to him. Well, anyways, I think you're right. He got sacked, right? Look, Tucker definitely got sacked. His stuff's actually quite interesting. We should look into that. We should talk about that because very relevant to the Fox News empire. A little bit more political. We don't have to get too deep into it. But and then BuzzFeed News. So, well, let's start with this. Let's start with BuzzFeed.
Drunk's still not trying to get cancelled. I see it. You
Yeah,
can
let's
feel
not-
it.
No, I'll have a very nuanced.
What's
take.
Strong going to watch every night now?
Yes.
That's the question.
Yeah. Tucker's out. You're going to watch Tucker on Rumble or wherever it is. That's probably where he's going to end up.
I mean,
with
that's
Andrew
where,
Tate and Russell Brand.
But this is where all this analysis is going, right? Like that's a top level news. So I'll give you the BuzzFeed take super quickly. So BuzzFeed News, Jonah Peretti, the founder of BuzzFeed, you have to say it's quite ambitious. He tried to make an internet first business, which obviously grew quite large on Facebook. You guys remember the heyday of BuzzFeed? Like,
remember those questionnaires?
Was it a Facebook page, was it, to begin with?
Facebook paid the amount of traffic these guys. So they were riding Facebook.
Insane.
Right? They fully understood. They were riding Facebook.
It was like a full. They basically invented a genre of content, right?
the listicles,
meme roundups, like totally invented it. And
they were the original thread boys of Facebook.
the original
basically.
thread boys,
Yeah,
OG thread boys, and Disney tried to buy them for $650 million. And
When they were on Facebook still.
when they were just blowing up all over Facebook, they had their dedicated webpage. But this is the whole point. Iger was going through his run of like acquiring all these IP properties, right? Pixar, Star Wars, Marvel, and then he's just like, oh, we need something for the young audience. Disney is so different than BuzzFeed is so different from everything that Disney was doing, but they realized that for digital play, we talked about it, right? It's like, remember, Vice was worth $6 billion once. You know what I mean? Like the insanity that was going on, right? And Disney put in a big check to Vice. So Disney tried to buy BuzzFeed for $650 million.
This is all like
Zero Wave.
these are all Succession subplots
I
too,
was
aren't
just
they?
thinking of Succession right now. Yeah.
Gojo and Varda, they're all Succession subplots.
What's Gojo supposed to be?
Gojo is supposed to be, I think, like a streaming. It's like a Netflix, Spotify type of thing.
Oh, right. Yeah.
That Substack one there. Sorry, I know spoiler
No,
alerts
when
here,
they're
but the
launching, yeah,
Substack
come
one
on.
they're trying to do is so funny.
Substack version meets Masterclass meets.
By the
New
way,
York.
just real quick, when we get to the finale of Succession, we're 100%
talking.
doing
We're doing
a
a
full
a
episode
Succession
because it's been
episode.
incredible. Oh my
It's been
god,
so
good.
good.
I'm caught up now, boys. Is what
All right,
I would
Okay,
say.
amazing.
maybe we'll finish
Spoilers.
off
So
with
guys,
that.
hit me. What do you tell me? What your thoughts were on BuzzFeed? Let me pin it with
Oh,
this:
incredible.
the downfall. It was worth $650 million. That was the offer from Disney. They said no. Bob Iger said fuck him to the founder CEO Jonah. He's like, they will never be worth as much as if they were with us. This is from a profile of Ben Smith.
Literally
who's
sounds
a
like
former-
Succession right now.
Yeah.
Yeah.
This is like, so Ben Smith, who's a former New York reporter, but worked at BuzzFeed, was editorial lead for many years. He's writing a book about it. This article dropped yesterday in Vanity Fair. So today, BuzzFeed is worth, I believe, $150 million. It went public in a SPAC last year. Man, if you bought BuzzFeed public, damn, dude. Like, we never gave that investment advice. I tell you that right now.
Well, how far are they down? Is it 98%?
Oh, dude, they're down like 90%. And they're worth less than the offer.
Like
They
the
got
rest of my
4 years to
portfolio,
go,
so I'm
right?
definitely
Yeah,
up there. So
fair
yeah.
enough, right?
Yeah.
And well, I'll tell you what's funny. Not funny. What's sad is when Jonah Purdy wrote the BuzzFeed layoff email. This is what is happening to BuzzFeed now. So they're combined with Huffington Post and Complex. So Jonah Purdy said, "We're shutting down BuzzFeed News. We're going to try to redirect all those resources and energy towards the front page of Huffington Post," which he also co-founded. So
Damn.
like we are full circle, boys. This
That's
is where
just a
BuzzFeed is
still
at.
redirect. They're literally just a traffic
yeah.
driver for Huffington Post.
What is the like? Do you have one example of a media acquisition where like momentum has turned around? Is there one example?
That's a good question.
That's a great question. That is a great
I can't
question.
think of it. I can't think of any on the top
pure
of my head, but I
media.
don't know that well that well.
Like a peer, yeah. Like that's a
It
good
feels
question.
like this is so like sentiment and culture driven, where it's like when this shit is gone, it's like the amount of
It's
energy
over.
and effort you have to put in to change it is like just fucking do something else.
Yeah.
But that was a Succession quote. So spoiler alert for anybody that hasn't seen it. It's like this is a great brand. It's like no, it's a parts shop. Like
Yeah.
I don't want the
part
brand. The
shop.
brand is shit.
Yeah.
It's the part,
So good.
dude. So
good, yeah.
Although
It's
we
so
got
good. It's
Williams,
too good,
right?
man. It's too
No,
good.
but he
I
nailed
cut,
it,
I
right?
cut out all TV except for Succession, man.
It's
Well, we might need to
unbelievable.
do
Too good.
a Telegram only or something. Like, we need to do like something where we
Yeah, that's a
people
good
opt
idea. A little
in.
watch party.
A little watch party, exactly, because it's just
NIA
such a
watch
good. Oh
party.
man, I'm
Yeah,
I'm
it's
gonna be so
incredible.
sad when it's done because it's probably the best show. I mean,
It's one of the.
That's insane.
When you talk about Mount Rushmore TV, I have to have Sopranos, have to have The Wire, and then this is a conversation that Bill Simmons on the Ringer
Top
actually
Boy.
had. Yeah.
No, I'm joking. Yeah, not the same level, but up
No,
there.
but this is battling for the other two spots. With like shows like Breaking Bad, Mad Men, like Game of Thrones. But anyways, back to BuzzFeed. So their future now, they're embracing generative AI. Like they're using AI to do a lot of stuff, which is kind of terrifying. But I think the takeaway for BuzzFeed is this: building on Facebook. A lot of companies tried. A lot of media companies tried. It's like, listen, the takeaway from this entire segment is going to be this: going independent, owning your distribution. That's what it is going to be. Because the next topic we're going to touch on is Tucker. Tucker got bounced from Fox News. He was huge. He was a superstar Fox News. Fox News lost $500 million in market cap yesterday when Tucker left or was fired. And he was fired because typically with an anchor of this status, you give him obviously time and you let him do the final goodbye, right? They fired him and said his last episode was on Friday. So they fired him on Monday. Apparently the decision to fire him came from Rupert Murdoch himself. So a couple of reasons why this might be happening. Ben Smith, this is actually very relevant. Ben Smith, who is now the co-founder of Semaphore, wrote an article this morning about Tucker Carlson. And he's explaining the fusion of Fox with the Republican Party of the United States. So Fox News rose up in the 90s under Roger Ailes. You guys remember Roger Ailes?
Yeah.
Yeah, like
Oh,
really
that was a good
nasty
show
dude.
too. What was that one?
Yeah, what was that?
Oh,
The
they
dramatization
did
of-
a dramatization of Roger Ailes, right?
Yeah.
Roger Ailes used to work with Nixon, political operator, nasty dude who understood this game, the political game, just like to a T, right? He was a kingmaker. in this article Ben Smith wrote, so like Paul Ryan, who was a vice presidential candidate with Mitt Romney, like would come kiss the ring, and then he later became speaker of Roger Ailes. Like we're talking one of the most powerful politicians in the world, going down to Fox News, kissing the ring of a guy that's determining what X% of the country thinks about politics, right? Because Fox News obviously runs the but is the mouthpiece for the Republican Party. Mouthpiece, they're a little bit more opportunistic. Like Rupert Murdoch weds himself to political parties for ratings and to curry favor. But the takeaway with Tucker Carlson was he took over that top spot from Bill O'Reilly. You guys remember Bill O'Reilly?
Oh, yeah.
Bill
Oh, fuck
O'Reilly, resigned 7 years ago, almost to the day.
Did he also resign, or did he resign in air
No,
quotes?
he was fired, actually. There's a sexual assault lawsuit. Something came out where that Fox had paid off $13 million worth to multiple sexual assault victims or people
I think Morning Show is a similar kind of story. I think it's based on something like that, yeah.
The whole point with Tucker, what's interesting about Tucker, I guess the takeaway from all this was, if you're Tucker Carlson, you're that big, and because he did play to the worst instincts of the Republican Party, like he's really pushing the January 6th Capitol and the stolen election stuff. And the reason why this is all big is it came out from this Dominion voting system lawsuit. You guys saw it last week, that massive settlement. Fox paid almost $800 million to Dominion Voting, which is the voting systems used for the elections, because relentlessly after the 2020 election, Fox was just peddling the story that these systems were hacked, systems were faulty, that they were a stolen election. And Dominion's like, yo, hold up. This is our business, right? Like, you're shitting all over our business. We're going to sue your face off until you can prove these claims. So you got paid $800 million. But the what came out during, it didn't go to court, but the discovery process leaked a lot of stuff. And Tucker, this is where it gets pretty, like, dark. Not dark, but, like, negative looking for him. He was saying he hated Donald Trump. He was saying he hated the management of Fox News. He said he knew that the stolen election storyline was probably a reach and not great for the country, but he was still pushing it. So, like, all these texts are coming out. And, I think Fox News is ultimately going to try to find a buyer. And Tucker was a little bit too close or too much in the face of the stolen election stuff. And obviously said some pretty negative things to the management of Fox. He also is actually under a lawsuit right now, too, from a former producer that said that there's a lot of misogyny, anti-Semitism in the workplace. But anyways, I'll wrap a bow on all this. I think this is more so along the lines of stuff we're talking about is like Tucker's going to have a massive independent platform, right? Like, that's just tomorrow. This guy flicks on a Substack or a Rumble video like we were joking about. Tens of millions of dollars in subscribers. So I don't know if that's his end game. I don't know if I'm not going to opine on the morality of it. I just think all these things that happened the past week are indicative of what we talk about in media, right? It's like these old bundles that were created around cable, old bundles created around traditional media. Everything's cracking, and I have no idea what the future holds, people. But we're here for it.
On Don Lemon, he just had a similar thing where he apparently was...
He's had a lot of gaps recently, and like behind the scenes.
Apparently behind the scenes he was, saying stuff to people.
Not well liked.
There were like complaints against him, I think, allegedly anyway. So
he's the
that
one
was
that
a
said
similar
Nikki
story.
Haley was not in her prime because she was 45 years old, and like that took a lot of heat. And then he had he's been there 20 years almost. Crazy. So anyways.
Mad. I think what the big issue for Trung, what you said about like BuzzFeed was they were all being valued as this like new media thing, which at the time they were growing like crazy and like making a huge impact. But the big thing is they were built off, BuzzFeed specifically was built off Facebook the same way not Angry Birds, what was that other game that was really popular on Facebook? Farmville. Yeah, exactly. Well, Farmville was a little bit different because it was at least native to Facebook and you played basically within Facebook, I think.
Yeah.
Whereas BuzzFeed, you're going off site, and as we know, the social platforms don't like you going off site. But back then, it wasn't as much of a problem because it was new. So their organic reach, so if they had 1 million followers, the number of people seeing their stuff was 50% or something like that. Now it's 0.1%. And so over time, that changed. and that they were building on rented land essentially, and
No, but I
eventually.
think the amount of profit at one point was Zynga was 10 to 20% of Facebook's
That's
revenue
mad.
when it went public.
But that's because they were staying on platform and they were taking a cut.
But to your point, right, it's like you're gonna get your ass booted.
Yeah, exactly. So that was the big thing where, like, the reason newsletters have become so important again, like they've been around for 20, 30 years. It's not like a new technology.
Owned.
Yeah, but it owned, exactly. Owned.
Podcast, semi-owned media.
The last thing I was going to say about BuzzFeed is like they weirdly had this like media arbitrage thing, right? Where they're just like curating, and obviously they have people writing for them and like producing content, but it's like you have this endless funnel of stuff. If you're just like becoming basically a rapper for everything on the internet, you could just churn out so much stuff. And it's like the format was the niche versus the content being the niche. So you could just appeal to like ridiculous amount of people. Like one thing is like, 10 puppies from wherever else. And then the next one is like the most expensive supercars in the world, or whatever. It's like not like the Lads Mag type trivia stuff. It is like OK Magazine of the internet.
Yeah.
Daily
Hits
Mail,
everything.
yeah.
Wait, who?
Yeah.
I'm guessing the supercars guy. You just like 18 best supercars.
Yeah. I can't even remember where I like used to see that stuff, but it was like legitimately novelty when it first was out, right?
It worked so well because it was.
No,
new,
but that's
yeah.
why they want to do BuzzFeed. That's why the BuzzFeed news shutting down was just like an acknowledgement that this former business model is like, let's build it on memes and listicles, but can you add something that has prestige on it? Because remember, BuzzFeed News, they did real stuff.
They broke
wanna
some
prove
crazy
it's a-
stuff, yeah.
Oh, they were,
Yeah.
yeah. Also, the quizzes. Find out which Friends character you are. Like, answer these 72 questions. You know what I mean? As you be there all day,
Yeah.
I'm a Joey. You know what I mean? That's like
Yeah.
so dumb.
Shucks.
It was very.
You need to clip that. I'm
Yeah,
a
yeah.
Joey.
I'm a Joey. Well, actually, that's a fun question. Which Friends characters are we before? No, I'm gonna start getting in some trouble there. All right, boys, I think we can wrap it up here. Anything else before we kick out?
No, that was meaty, man. Every
was
time,
good.
we come in here, we're like, what are their topics going to be? And just ends up being nice and
Yeah,
meaty.
there was a lot of good stuff in there.
Crumbs, Wi-Fi goes out halfway through. Bilal
Yeah.
has a Google. You know what? I think at this point, the listeners that have been here since episode 1, you're just kind of coming for the Easter eggs now. You want to know, when is Trung's internet going to go out? When is the Bilal joke coming?
Yeah.
Like, when is Jack going to reveal the password from his kettlebell? Like, these are all just the running jokes.
Yeah. That's true. Well, as always, thanks for being here, everyone. Appreciate you listening every week, spreading the words in the group chat with the boys, with the ladies, and your colleagues in Slack. If you're still on Slack, the small percentage of you still stuck there, not Microsoft Teams. Appreciate you spreading the word. Also, make sure you're subscribed on the Instagram, TikTok,
Throw some reviews.
Shorts. People have been enjoying some of those as well. So do us a favor, double tap those as well for us. Keep blowing those up, and we will see you guys on the next one. Cheers.
Peace.
Right.